There's been a few insights into Bitcoin that have been red pills for me, and I want to share them. These are insights or realizations that I've had throughout my Bitcoin journey that made me recognize what we're really dealing with here is will change the course of history. That's the amplitude of the phenomenon we are dealing with here. It, Bitcoin changes history, just like a few other recent technologies have changed the course of history, from the internet to encryption. These have changed power dynamics forever. I would also say 3D printed self defense tools. We're still in the early stages of this, but 3D printed self defense tools will change the course of history by forever modifying power dynamics. But in particular, for Bitcoin, I want to get into some red pills. So, the first red pill that made me realize that what I'm dealing with when I look at Bitcoin is not just a speculative asset. It's not just a horse to bet on. This is when I realized that Bitcoin changes history. The first red pill is that you can store the keys to your wealth in your mind. Not metaphorically, but literally. If you have your Bitcoin seed phrase, you memorize it, and you memorize it like your life depends on it. You memorize it like your wealth depends on it. And you will be able to do this. You can easily remember it if everything rides on it. If everything is at stake. You can absolutely remember that. You burn it into your mind, and then you destroy whatever copy you were memorizing from of that seed phrase. The keys to your wealth are now literally in your mind, and that is the only place they exist in the universe. That is profound. That changes history. Now, keep in mind, I don't recommend that you do this. Obviously, if you mess up, you've lost everything. But in extreme circumstances, during times of turmoil and war and oppression, the ability to transfer the entirety of your wealth onto a distributed network, distributed across the entire world, and then to have the keys to access that wealth in your mind and nowhere else, changes history. If you don't see how that does not change everything, then you don't get Bitcoin yet. If you just see Bitcoin as this asset that you buy and it goes up and your purchasing power goes up, and that's, you've made some fiat gains. If you're still viewing Bitcoin from that perspective, you're not looking at what is going on here. It used to be that a gold vault was a honeypot. It was a honeypot that tempted foreign invaders. It was a honeypot that tempted domestic governments either to use in implementing various scams relating to issuing more notes than there is actually gold to back them. It was a honeypot in the sense that there's all sorts of games you can play with. When a vault is sealed, no one really knows how much gold is there compared to how much gold is claimed to be there. There's games that you can play with swapping out fake gold bars with the real ones, and so forth. In so many ways, a gold vault is just a giant honeypot waiting for someone to exploit it, either an insider or an outsider. But with Bitcoin, which is not stored in any central location, it is not even stored physically, and the keys to it can be literally dematerialized into mind. into an idea that is held in your mind. This changes everything. It changes the game theory of war. It changes the game theory of government confiscation. It changes the game theory of violence. Bitcoin changes everything because you can hold the keys to your wealth literally in your mind. This was not something that could even be conceived by humans. For the vast majority of human history, the idea that you can essentially store your wealth in your mind it would not compute. Most people throughout history would never be able to imagine that such an ability would exist. And even a decade ago, this idea was just viewed by everyone except for a few crazy people. You know, the extreme early Bitcoiners, the cyberpunks. They got it. They were the first to get it. And even now, I would say, 95% of the world they have not realized how the game theory has changed. The game theory of history, essentially, by changing the dynamics between those who hold wealth and those who wish to exploit it, confiscate it, steal it, or whatever. That all changes when a single individual, a dishwasher, has the power to hold their wealth in their mind in such a way that a nation state cannot confiscate it. Even if all the resources of the nation state were dedicated towards confiscating the wealth of one dishwasher, the asymmetry of power with Bitcoin is such that the lowest person, the poorest person, can shield their savings, their wealth, against the most powerful forces on Earth. There's such asymmetry between the weak and the powerful has never before been seen in human history. Now, I first had this red pill moment. When I heard this and I understood what it meant when someone said you can store your wealth, or at least the keys to your wealth, in your brain. When I heard that, and I kind of had a basic understanding of how Bitcoin worked, that was for me the moment that I decided, wow, this is something that not only do I have to look into, I need to dedicate some serious research into this. But that's when I decided I need to start accumulating. It would be irresponsible for me not to start accumulating even before my understanding of what I'm buying has fully matured. And it never does, right? With Bitcoin, you never fully understand what you're dealing with. Bitcoin is, we don't know what it is. I mean, I call Bitcoin money, but I have a feeling that our understanding of just what we are dealing with is incomplete, insufficient, narrow. I think the implications of Bitcoin over the next years and decades will be such that it will surprise even those who think about these things all the time. We had the internet, the fledgling internet in the early 2000s and the late 90s. No one had any idea the implications of what would happen when the internet scaled to the entire world. If the internet failed in the 90s or the early 2000s, it really wouldn't have been that big a deal. it would have been almost like losing a novelty. Some businesses would have went bankrupt. No big deal, really. If the internet were to go down now, suddenly and without warning, people starve to death. Militaries rely upon the internet for communication. Supply chains would be crippled. There's if you stop and think of just how important the internet is now, you can sit there for hours and come up with all sorts of ways in which the internet has become a critical part of a civilization. It is critical infrastructure. Civilization stops working if the internet goes down. Famine, starvation, chaos, right? I think we're going to have a similar situation with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to become so all-pervasive. It's going to become critical infrastructure for the world economy. Critical. And to the extent that it becomes, everything is built on top of that infrastructure of Bitcoin, the more it is cemented forever as this permanent fixture of not just the economy, but civilization itself. You see why I say that if you see Bitcoin just as a speculative asset to make some fiat gains on, you're not getting it. Bitcoin changes everything to such a degree that we can't even imagine the full implications of what is going on here. All of these insights come from the original Red Pill. When you realize the implications of storing the keys to your wealth in your mind, dematerializing any physical bridge to your wealth, that's revolutionary. It changes history. Now, of course, I like my hardware wallets. I am not about to destroy them and just rely on my memory in order to access my Bitcoin. The point is that if it comes to that, you can. Do you realize how much wealth has been confiscated, stolen from people throughout history, simply because it had to be stored physically? And especially when you are fleeing a dangerous or oppressive jurisdiction, when you are crossing borders, that is when things get really dangerous. That is when even holding a copy of your seed phrase could be dangerous. It's when holding cash or gold certainly is dangerous. And throughout history, how much wealth has been confiscated, stolen, because people did not have the ability to store their wealth in their mind. It changes everything. It changes the dynamics, the power dynamics of history.